You know, in our world, there are these two forces in a constant tug of war. On one side, you have a powerful, really compelling story, and on the other, you have the quiet, relentless force of data. Today, we're going to explore which one of those actually wins in the long run.
It really makes you wonder, right? What truly holds more power? Is it a narrative that can grab the entire world's attention almost overnight? Or is it a single, simple fact that quietly goes on to reshape our world for decades to come? Let's unpack that.
So on one side, you've got narrative. It's loud, it's fast, and it's all about emotion. But on the other side, you've got data. It's quiet, it's slow, it's definitely more complex, but it's real. These two forces are constantly at odds, and they shape basically everything, from the value of companies to the future of science itself.
All right, so let's start with the immense power of stories, what we can call the tyranny of narrative.
I mean, this quote just absolutely nails it. Think about it. An earnings call, an analyst upgrade, a CEO's grand vision for the future. What are those? They're all stories. They take the incredibly complex world of finance and simplify it, creating this momentum that can literally move billions of dollars in just a few hours. But, and this is a huge but, for all their power, narratives are deeply flawed. They distort reality because they focus on drama instead of the slow, steady trends that are actually happening. They prioritize being easy to understand over being accurate. And maybe most importantly, they're temporary. They burn incredibly bright, and then they just burn out.
So what happens is this reliance on stories creates these wild market cycles that are driven by what we believe, not by what's actually real. And the result is this huge, often dangerous gap between a price driven by a story and an asset's true fundamental value.
Okay, now let's flip the coin and turn to the other side of the equation. This is where data acts like an invisible hand, this quiet, compounding force that's just working silently in the background.
See, unlike a story that needs constant attention and fuel to survive, data just exists. It persists. Every single transaction, every measurement, every observation, it just adds another layer, making the overall picture stronger and more robust over time. Data doesn't need headlines to have a massive impact.
And this is a perfect example of how data eventually wins. Think about disruptive tech. The early narrative, it dismissed electric vehicles as these niche toys and smartphones as just silly gadgets. But while all the stories were being dismissive, the data, the user adoption curves, the falling costs, that data was telling a completely different story. And eventually, that data became so undeniable that reality just won, and the entire world had to reprice everything.
But here's a really critical distinction we have to make. Raw, unorganized data can be just as confusing as a misleading story. To have real power, data needs something more. It needs structure, and this is the core idea we're building towards. And that brings us to this key concept, structured truth. This isn't just about a pile of numbers. It's what happens when data is carefully verified, put into context, and organized. It's how we transform all those raw, noisy signals out there into a shared, reliable foundation that we can all actually build upon. So how do you get there? Well, it's a very deliberate process. First, you have to verify the data. Trace it all the way back to its original, reliable source. Then you contextualize it. You figure out, what does this data actually mean in the bigger picture? And finally, you organize it in a way that's easy to understand and can be checked by anyone. That right there, that's what builds trust.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. Why does this battle between narrative and structured truth matter so much? Because at the end of the day, reality always wins.
And the payoff is just crystal clear. Narratives are fantastic for grabbing short-term attention, but that value is fleeting. Building on a foundation of structured truth, though, that creates a massive, compounding advantage that only gets more and more powerful over time.
And this is really the ultimate takeaway. Capital, talent, innovation, pretty much every form of intelligence you can think of will inevitably gravitate toward the most reliable, clearly defined version of the truth. You just can't build lasting value on a shaky foundation of stories.
So what this means is that the work that truly matters isn't about crafting the next viral narrative. No, it's about building the systems and the platforms that prioritized, verified, organized, and auditable data. That is the real infrastructure of the future.
And that leaves us with one final thought, something for you to consider. Take a look at your own decisions, your own investments, your own beliefs.
Are they built on the shifting sands of a really compelling story? Or are they built on the solid bedrock of structured truth?